The words, "we're going in a new direction," hit me like a freight train. But what Richard didn't know was that I had 15 years of his dirty financial secrets locked away in a safe deposit box. My name is David Martinez, 52 years old, and until that gray Tuesday morning in March, I was the chief financial officer at Pinnacle Construction Solutions in Denver, Colorado. For 15 years, I had been the backbone of their financial operations, turning a struggling regional contractor into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Richard Blackwood, the CEO, sat across from me in the mahogany-paneled conference room, flanked by Linda Morrison from HR and someone I'd never seen before, a young man in an expensive suit who couldn't have been older than 25. "David, we appreciate everything you've done for Pinnacle," Richard said, his voice carrying that practiced corporate sympathy that meant absolutely nothing. "But the board has decided to restructure the financial department. We're bringing in fresh perspectives." I nodded slowly, keeping my expression neutral. "I see. And my replacement?" The young man straightened his tie. "Tyler Blackwood," he said confidently. "I just finished my MBA at Wharton, and I'm excited to modernize Pinnacle's financial strategies." Blackwood, of course, Richard's nephew, the same spoiled kid who'd been failing upward through various family businesses for years. I'd seen his resume, impressive on paper, but anyone who'd actually worked in construction finance would spot the gaps immediately. "The transition will be immediate," Linda added, sliding a folder across the table. "Your severance package is quite generous, 6 months' salary plus benefits." I opened the folder and scanned the documents without really reading them. My mind was already elsewhere, calculating, planning. "This is unexpected," I said finally. "I'll need time to organize my files, ensure proper handover procedures." "Actually," Richard interrupted, "Tyler will be handling the transition independently. Fresh eyes, clean slate, you understand? We'd prefer you clear out your office today." That's when I knew. This wasn't about modernization or fresh perspectives. This was about removing the one person who knew exactly how Richard had been cooking the books for the past decade. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and shook hands with each of them. "I understand completely," I said. "I wish you all the best." As I walked back to my office, my former office, I couldn't help but smile slightly. They had no idea what they'd just done. I started at Pinnacle in 2008, right after the financial crisis had decimated the construction industry. Richard's father, Harold Blackwood, had built the company from nothing, but age and poor health were forcing him to step back. Richard, fresh from a string of failed ventures, was desperate to prove himself worthy of the family legacy. The company was bleeding money. Unpaid invoices stacked up, subcontractors were threatening lawsuits, and the bank was calling in loans. Harold hired me away from a larger firm specifically because I had a reputation for turning around distressed companies. "Fix this mess," he told me on my first day. "Richard's got vision, but he needs someone who understands numbers." What I discovered was worse than I'd expected. Richard wasn't just bad with money. He was actively creative with it. Inflated project costs, phantom subcontractor payments, materials purchased but never delivered. He'd been using Pinnacle as his personal piggy bank for years. But Harold was dying, lung cancer eating away at him, and he just wanted to see the family business survive. So I made a decision that would haunt me for the next 15 years. I'd fix the books, make the company profitable, but I'd document everything along the way. Over the years, as Pinnacle grew and prospered, Richard's schemes became more sophisticated. Offshore accounts disguised as equipment purchases, kickbacks from suppliers buried in legitimate invoices, tax shelters that crossed the line from aggressive to fraudulent. Every transaction, every forged signature, every fake receipt, I copied and filed away. Not because I planned to use it, but because I knew that someday, someone would need to untangle the web of lies that kept Pinnacle profitable. I never thought that someone would be me. The safe deposit box was my insurance policy, updated quarterly with new evidence of Richard's financial crimes. Bank statements, email printouts, signed contracts that didn't match the versions filed with the IRS. 15 years of meticulous documentation that painted a clear picture of systematic fraud. As I packed my personal belongings that afternoon, Tyler was already making himself comfortable in my chair, scrolling through my computer files with the confidence of someone who had no idea what he was looking at. Any advice for the new guy? He asked, not looking up from the screen. I paused at the door. The Q1 tax filings are due next week, I said. Make sure you understand the depreciation schedules before you submit anything. He waved dismissively. I've got it covered. This stuff isn't rocket science. That night, I sat in my home office with a glass of bourbon, staring at a business card I'd kept in my wallet for 3 years. Agent Sarah Chen, IRS Criminal Investigation Division. We'd met at a tax law seminar, and she'd mentioned that financial professionals with concerns about their employers could always reach out confidentially. I'd never imagined I'd need her card. The call was brief. Agent Chen listened carefully as I outlined the situation, asked a few pointed questions about documentation, and scheduled a meeting for the following week. She seemed particularly interested when I mentioned the offshore accounts and the systematic overbilling of federal contracts. Mr. Martinez, she said before hanging up, I want to be clear about something. Once we start this process, there's no going back. Are you prepared for the scrutiny, the depositions, the possibility that this could drag on for months or even years? I looked out my window at the city lights, thinking about 15 years of loyalty rewarded with betrayal. Agent Chen, I said, I've been preparing for this conversation longer than you know. The investigation moved faster than I'd expected. Within 2 weeks, IRS agents were conducting a routine audit of Pinnacle's books. Tyler, confident in his abilities, welcomed them personally, even offering to explain the company's innovative accounting practices. That lasted exactly 1 day. By the end of the week, Richard was calling me. I let it go to voicemail. David, it's Richard. Look, I know things ended awkwardly, but we could really use your help with this IRS situation. They're asking questions about transactions that go back years, stuff only you would remember. Call me back, we can work something out. I didn't call back. 3 more voicemails followed, each more desperate than the last. By the 4th call, Richard's carefully maintained composure had cracked completely. David, please. They're talking about criminal charges, wire fraud, tax evasion. This could destroy everything my father built. You know I never meant for things to get this complicated. We can fix this together. Still, I didn't respond. There was nothing left to fix. The news broke 6 weeks after my termination. Local construction CEO arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme, read the headline in the Denver Post. The article detailed a 3-year investigation into systematic tax evasion and federal contract fraud at Pinnacle Construction Solutions. Richard Blackwood was facing 12 federal charges. Tyler, despite his claims of ignorance, was named as an unindicted co-conspirator for his role in filing fraudulent tax returns. The company's assets were frozen pending restitution proceedings. I received a call from the federal prosecutor's office that same day. They needed me to testify as a witness in the government's case. Agent Chen assured me that my cooperation would be noted favorably, both in terms of any potential charges against me and in the inevitable civil litigation. You did the right thing, she said. Companies like Pinnacle don't survive because they're well run. They survive because good people stay quiet. You chose not to stay quiet. The trial lasted 3 months. I testified for 2 days, walking the jury through 15 years of financial documents that painted a picture of deliberate, systematic fraud. Richard's defense team tried to paint me as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge, but the evidence was overwhelming. In the end, Richard was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $14 million in restitution. Tyler received 2 years probation and a lifetime ban from working in corporate finance. Pinnacle Construction Solutions was liquidated, its assets sold to pay back defrauded clients and the federal government. 340 employees lost their jobs, but that wasn't my fault. That was Richard's. His greed had built a house of cards that was always going to collapse. I just made sure it happened on his timeline, not when it could hurt even more people. 6 months after the trial, I received an unexpected visitor at my new job. I'd been hired as CFO of a renewable energy firm that valued transparency over creative accounting. Linda Morrison, Pinnacle's former HR director, sat across from me in a coffee shop, looking older and more tired than I remembered. I wanted to apologize, she said quietly. I knew something wasn't right with the finances, but Richard was persuasive. He made it sound like you were just resistant to change, stuck in old ways of thinking. I sipped my coffee, studying her face. What did you know, Linda? Enough, she admitted. The phantom employees on payroll, The equipment leases that didn't match actual deliveries, the way Richard always insisted on handling certain vendor payments personally. I should have asked more questions. Why didn't you? She was quiet for a long moment. Because asking questions might have cost me my job, and I had 2 kids in college. It's not an excuse, just an explanation. I nodded. I understood the calculation, even if I didn't agree with it. What are you doing now? Teaching, she said. Business ethics at the community college. Trying to make sure the next generation understands that silence isn't always golden. And after she left, I sat alone, thinking about choices and consequences. I'd made my choice 15 years ago when I first discovered Richard's schemes. I could have reported him then, saved myself and hundreds of others years of complicity. But I'd chosen the harder path. Document everything, build an airtight case, and wait for the right moment. Maybe that made me complicit too. Maybe ethical purity was a luxury I'd given up the moment I decided to fix the books instead of exposing the fraud. But in the end, justice had been served, and that had to be enough. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mr. Martinez, this is Tyler Blackwood. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I was young and stupid, and I thought I could ride my family name forever. Prison would have taught me lessons I needed to learn anyway. Thank you for not letting me learn them the hard way. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late, and some lessons cost too much to teach. But sitting there in that coffee shop, watching ordinary people go about their ordinary lives, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 15 years. Peace. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just the quiet knowledge that sometimes, when you're patient enough and careful enough, justice finds its way. Richard Blackwood thought firing me would eliminate his biggest threat. Instead, it activated his most dangerous enemy, a man with nothing left to lose and 15 years of evidence to support his case. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served hot or cold. Sometimes it's served precisely, methodically, and completely. Sometimes it's served like justice should be, inevitable, thorough, and final. The company Harold Blackwood built with his own hands was gone, destroyed by his son's greed. But the truth had finally seen daylight, and 300 innocent employees would receive full back pay from the restitution fund. That was worth 15 years of waiting,